How do you like going to school? You're on the MECEP program. How's that going?
It's going good. I actually enjoy it a lot. Picked a major that I enjoy because I figured once I graduate, I have a job, so I don't need to try to do that traditional find a major that'll get me a job kind of route.
Oh,
So,
what major? What's your major?
English and media production. So I actually have two.
Oh, okay, cool. Is what do you do for media production? Is that like a? I mean, are you doing video and audio and all that? Is that what's going on there?
Yes, there's so the introductionary courses start with media or video, audio, photography, and then things like Creative Cloud, Photoshop, animation, um,
That's awesome.
all that kind of stuff. So, and then it goes into more focuses, and I think I'm going to be focusing on documentary media.
Hell yeah,
Like,
man.
so yeah, it's
What
been
school? You're at Clemson, right? Or not Clemson? Freaking
Colorado, Boulder.
Colorado Boulder. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Um, that's cool. I was telling people when I was getting out, they're like, "What are you gonna do?" And I'm like, "I don't know." I was like, "I'm thinking maybe try to get a gig and go make documentaries." Because
yeah.
that's what I was like. Because wouldn't it be cool to get paid to travel around and just go see cool shit, or crazy stuff like. Yeah. So, but that's a world. I mean, you have to kind of get into it and fund yourself, and I don't know. It's a tough one to get into, though.
For sure. Yeah, I figured like you just said, great option. Sounds like a sweet job if you can get into it.
Yeah.
That's great, and hopefully this major will help with that if that's where I want to go.
That
So
is that is definitely a major or like a job field that you probably need to like have a really good network. Like you have to like constantly be networking and meeting people because I feel like that's one of the ones where it's just going to tell you you're going to get gigs by word of mouth, or people are going to vouch for you, and stuff like that. I don't know what your opinion is on that, but probably.
probably I could see that for sure.
So I just posted. I had Brian Buckley on the previous podcast, and I posted a clip up from our conversation up onto YouTube and Instagram, and I think Facebook too. And it was me asking him as a he was an infantry officer, and he went to MARSOC and did all that. And I was asking him, in 2021, do you think it's really necessary for someone to have a degree to become an officer? You're going through the MECEP program. Do you think the program you're going through is somehow going to benefit the Marine Corps more, or yourself? You're just kind of taking something that you want to do and taking advantage of this benefit on your way to become an officer.
I'd say it's a little bit of both. As far as a benefit to me, straight up, uh, it's it's just a qualification that I need according to the Marine Corps to become an officer.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say it's necessarily needed to have a degree, but in the same thing with the program itself, as how it provides the Marine Corps some benefit is the fact that we're used pretty heavily to introduce Marine Corps lifestyle to college students. Also, kind of help with the OCS courses with intermingling prior enlisted guys with 4 to 12 years of experience with people that have no experience in the Marine Corps at all
Mm-hmm.
and just went to college after high school. So I think there's a benefit in making us do this. I don't for for those that are not in the Marine Corps yet. So I feel like the program's more to use us in the Marine Corps' benefit to help grow the new officers coming in rather than a benefit directly to us.
Okay. So you're saying the Marine Corps is basically checking the box to get the requirement done for you to become an officer, but at the same time, the fringe benefit of that is you get to like actually talk one on one with ROTC candidates and people like that and kind of give them a real perspective of what the military is like.
Exactly. Yeah. So the Marine Corps gets a huge benefit by, in a way, using us for the benefit of the new Marines that'll be coming in,
Mhm.
so that they have lots of stories that we can tell them about our experience, a lot of different jobs that they
Mhm.
can have. If people have questions about them, they can ask us. We schedule and provide training. I taught classes every semester I've been at school to the uh, freshman, junior, and senior midshipmen. So on anything from patrolling to Marine Corps orders to uniform stuff and whatever they can think of. So we're being used for the benefit of the new guys coming in, I'd say,
Do you
pretty
think
heavily.
is it? Do you think it's standard across the board, the things that you're doing at yours, or do you think every college is probably a little bit different and kind of doing their own thing?
I'd say every college is a little bit different. There's a few guys that I joined or did the MECEP program with and that I keep in contact with. They go to separate schools. Boulder is probably the second largest in the nation behind San Diego
Hmm.
area schools. And I know some schools have a handful of MECEPs and they are all utilized in different ways, whether heavily or not at all. And just depending on the unit and what they want from us.
Hmm.
So it's all dependent on whoever's running the unit, whether it's the captain, major, or the lieutenant.
Does it still feel like you're in the military, or does it kind of feel like you get that kind of reservist vibe? Is it like, oh, that's probably what a reservist feels like?
Definitely a reservist vibe for sure. I feel the events help, like the PT, like once a week. We have PT at least at Boulder once a week on Mondays. Um, some kind of classic or classes or training on Tuesdays, like your suicide prevention, um, all that kind of annual training stuff that we get as active duty Marines. But yeah, it's definitely, I feel like I'm out and just kind of dabble in military stuff every now and then. So it's very weird. One weekend a semester, so twice a year, we do a field exercise for 2 days. So four days a year that I'm sleeping outside and patrolling.
Oh
Yeah,
no,
it's
in the
it's
field.
yes, in the field. It's not a lot at all.
Yeah.
So I definitely feel like I'm out most days, which is weird.
Do you think that guys that are going into MECEP, some of them probably get a taste of the real world and are like, "Fuck, man, I don't want to go back. Like, this isn't for me anymore."
Yes, I'd say it's a mixture. There's definitely guys like, okay, I wish I just got out now because this college life's pretty good. Um, I'm enjoying the freedom that I have, and they can see that civilian side. And then there's also, I'd say, a good percentage of guys that maybe they only did one enlistment and then put in a MECEP package, and maybe didn't even deploy once. So they're taking extra classes trying to graduate as early as possible, like doubling the required course load to get back to the Marine Corps because they really didn't get that time in that some other guys did. So it's a good mixture of guys that want to get back in as soon as possible. They miss it right away, and then there's some guys that are like, man, that's, I don't know, maybe I should have just got out. So um, yeah, but those guys usually turn around and they get excited about TBS by the time they graduate, and um, but yeah, I'd say it's a healthy mixture of both worlds there.
What options do you have at this point? Because you've already gone through OCS, right?
Yes.
So let's say you're like, you know what, fuck this. I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to go back and be a dirty enlisted guy. Can you just stop? Can you just come back to the fleet? Like, how does that work? Or are you like, hey, you have to graduate or you're fucked?
Um, well, there's some guys that fail out of school.
Yeah.
They go right back to their units usually. So I guess that's a way.
Yeah,
There's
that's
also
one way.
That's one way, and then there's also I'm not 100% sure on like how legal this is 'cause I'm not looking into it, but I think there's some guys that can I guess technically deny their commission and go back to their unit that way after graduating.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're going to be NJP'd for that somehow, or maybe lose the rank that you may have picked up in the 3 or 4 years that you're in school. So let's say I picked up gunnery sergeant next year, which is very possible.
Because it's
Uh,
non-competitive, right?
non-competitive. So maybe if I did deny my commission, even as a gunnery sergeant, when I graduate, I would probably get reverted back to staff sergeant and then sent back to a recon unit. So in some cases, that doesn't sound too bad, especially if I want to go back to a recon unit.
Yeah.
But it's also, I'm sure, a bad mark on your career progression.
Yeah, for sure. For
Nice,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I can see how some guys are just like, you know what, this is cool, and you know, there can't be any like monetary return, like for you guys to have to pay it back because you're using your GI Bill, right? Isn't this your
Yeah.
GI Bill benefits?
Yeah, you're using your GI Bill benefits, so you're using what is yours already. So
Mm-hmm.
that you're not like the ROTC kids, if they were to get out, they would have to pay their school back because they never actually served
Mm-hmm.
any time in the military. So it is kind of beneficial in that way. Yeah, we're using what's already ours, our scholarship. So there, what the money has gone through is what's gone through. There's nothing they can charge us for. But right before you attend school, you have to do, I think, a 6-year reenlistment.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say it's been 3 or 4 years, I'll have, 2 or 3 left if I didn't commission, let's say, and went back to the fleet. So you still have to do time,
Yeah,
at
for
least.
sure.
Yeah.
That's something I didn't even realize until I met a few guys that were doing MECEP, is that you lose your GI Bill benefits. I was like, man, that's kind of bullshit. I thought the point of going to MECEP is you get to go to school for free and, you get all this. I mean, you still do, but that'd be cool if you had those benefits still and you could get out and like get a master's or something if that's something you wanted to pursue, or, if you found out that getting a job in the documentary world is harder than you thought, you could look into a different field or something like that. Yeah, like I was saying online though, I'm of the opinion that I think more enlisted guys should be considered for commissions, and I think that the requirement to go to a 4-year or have a 4-year degree is kind of outdated, considering in 2021 we have so much information available to us, at my fingertips. My phone has like everything I ever need to know, on it. It's crazy. And to say that like you have to go to school to be educated is I think a farce in this day and age. And only 25% of Americans even go to college. So, what's the representation there, To me, like I say, if you do a 4-year enlistment, let's say you're a recon guy or whatever, any MOS, and you do a 4-year enlistment, and you're like, you know what, I want to go to school. There should be some kind of board set up where you get approved for it. Still go to OCS, still go to TBS, still go to an officer school, MOS school, to learn the bigger picture stuff that you didn't get as an enlisted guy. But then you come back and now you're like so full of knowledge, rather than going off to school where
Yes.
you're an English major. And I actually said in the video, I was like, these people going off and learning classics and getting a degree and whatever, which there's nothing wrong with that, because there's there's warriors out there that are like educated in the classics and stuff, like Killzone. I don't know if you follow him on Instagram, but he's like one of those people that brings out good text and information from books and stuff like that. But I don't think, like, big picture wise, there's just no, if there was like a requirement for the degree, like if you're like, hey, it has to be a STEM major, or it has to be something that kind of fits into the Marine Corps mold, like it helps the Marine Corps directly. But if you're like, hey, I'm gonna go become a dance major, like what the fuck, like, I mean, but that still counts.
Yes. I'd say against the Marine Corps, the Navy definitely guides their majors for their officer programs.
Oh, really?
Not sure about the Army. I know the Navy does,
Okay.
but all their time in school doesn't count towards their retirement years. Unlike, so there's some benefits both ways depending on which branch you're in. But yeah, I'd say I agree with you. Intelligence is intelligence. There are plenty of very highly skilled individuals, people that have a lot of knowledge, can learn quickly, that maybe just didn't have money to go to school out of high school, and couldn't get an athletic scholarship or whatever the situation is. I'd say there's plenty of intelligent enlisted guys that have the mental capability of getting a degree that just didn't do that.
Yeah, it's just not important for some people.
And it wasn't a big deal. And they who knows, they read a lot of books on their own, they study on their own. I'd say I learned more on my own studying, things that pique my interests
Mm-hmm.
than I do in a college setting.
Well, I
So,
mean, and imagine like someone got out of high school and went directly into the trades and became a construction person. Name your field, did all of that and made it all the way to the journeyman, which is a couple years process, like that. And they're like, you know what, man, I want to serve my country. I'm going to join the Marine Corps. Why wouldn't we make that person an officer in an engineer unit where they already know how to do construction and they get the like what I'm saying, or an entrepreneur that goes out and starts a company. That kind of like life skills and like training that you've given yourself is just as important as a 4-year degree from a school.
oh yeah, yeah. I think it literally is just an outdated thing that nobody's thought of changing, because like I think way back in the day, it was officers had to be from like noble families
Mm-hmm.
and just wealthy, generally just wealthy people, that hey, you're going to join the military, but you're going to be an officer because you come from so and so's family. You're this person's son.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like we're kind of still hanging back in that historical element of needing a degree um, to be an officer. That definitely could be changed. I just don't know if and when
Yeah,
they'll.
we'll see how it goes. I'm the first
Yeah,
person like making a big deal about it. This is like the third or fourth podcast I've talked about it, so people are probably
yeah,
getting tired of hearing about it. So anyway, let's get back to we'll start from the beginning for you. So you've been all over the place. You were crew chief first, then you went with recon, and then now you're obviously MECEP program, becoming an officer. So let's back up. You're the first like air wing guy I've had on. So this is your opportunity to tell everybody how hard it is in the air wing, and that we don't know, we don't get it. So tell us about like what was it like when you joined the Marine Corps? One, why did you join the Marine Corps? Did you have like military family or Marines in your family? And why did you choose the air wing?
okay. I'll start at the beginning. I had two grandfathers that were both Marines. Um, so that was the closest thing. And then I had an uncle and cousin in Navy EOD. So there was some family in the military. Wanted to join the military personally because I felt like I had to earn the freedoms that I have as an American. I wouldn't expect anyone else to do that. That was just my personal belief of, hey, life's pretty good. I enjoy a lot of freedoms as a citizen of the United States. I feel like I owe it to the country that gives me this to serve.
Mm-hmm.
So that got me through my first enlistment, I'll say, and that's why I joined. As far as the air wing goes, I was actually open contract with my recruiter for 5 months in the hopes of getting a recon contract. So I initially wanted to do recon right away from high school.
Mm-hmm.
But about 5 months in, the recruiter's like, hey, you're supposed to go to boot camp in like 2 weeks. You don't have a job. Do you want to go on open contract, or do you want to like one of your top three choices? And I think my top choices were recon, then infantry, and then like crash fire rescue, because I thought about being a firefighter or something.
Mm-hmm.
And my recruiter's like, well, there's this helicopter door gunner job. I don't know if there's any slots or whatever, but if you're interested in that, I could throw that in your top three. And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds cool. I guess, yeah, throw it in there and we'll see what contract I get. And I think that was his setup of,
He's like, I gotta get this quota.
I got to get this, aircrew job in here. So he threw that in. Like a day later, he calls me, hey, got you one of your choices. Got this helicopter door gunner job. You still okay with going to boot camp with that in 2 weeks? And I'm like, so I took the summer off after high school. I think my boot camp date was September 2nd. I was the only one in my entire high school that joined the military at all in any branch.
Mm.
And everyone's going to college or they, started working in the trades or something. So like September, so the first week of September. So I didn't want to just be at home, not doing anything while everybody's going to school and like starting their lives. So I'm like, yes, I'll go. So that's kind of how I got the aircrew stuff. Helicopter door gunner was kind of the job. There's a lot more to it. But the recruiter told me, hey, in 2 years, you can lat move. So little did I know, it takes about a year and a half to 2 years to get job training to be like a crew chief
Mm-hmm.
on an aircraft. So I went to school after MCT straight down to Florida, Pensacola, Florida for aircrew candidate school, which was like the Guardian. It's like all swim school.
Oh, really?
Yes, and that's where that's where rescue swimmers go to train for in the Navy and in the Marine Corps as part of crew chief MOS. So you're just learning survival swimming. I think the longest swim's a mile, and then you tread in your gear. So right away I was in the swimming stuff, which is great because I spent the last 6 months, I thought I was going recon at the YMCA doing, drown proofing and bottom samples and long distance swims and all that. So it still helped me
For sure.
in my MOS doing that. So that was great. I ended up calling my recruiter and saying thank you because the job actually sounded cool once I got to that school. And then I went to mechanic school, and this is something I told my recruiter too. I'm like, hey, any job except for mechanics or electronics, if I can't get any of my choices. So I just don't want to be a mechanic or do anything electronics because I'm just terrible at that. I lived with my mom growing up. My dad wasn't around. I knew I wasn't good at that kind of stuff or work. And here I am checking into mechanic school, a 2-month school in North Carolina. And then from there, went to flight school in Camp Pendleton, California. And that was 8 months of reading basically textbooks 8 hours a day, and teaching back to my instructors each system. So engine systems, fuel systems, rotor systems, flight controls, cockpits, and then going through each gauge in the cockpit, saying what it is, what it does, how it gets its input, where like everything, so that you could troubleshoot the aircraft if it ever went down. Because the pilots aren't going to troubleshoot anything; they just know how to fly. And so it was up to the crew chief and back to pretty much be able to fix it if you ever went down, like off the airfield somewhere.
Yeah, which happens.
Which happens, and it happened to me several times.
What platform are you working on?
I was flying CH-46s, which are now out of the Marine Corps. I think their last flight was in 2015. Recently, we've seen a lot of videos of CH-46s flying out of Afghanistan. So there were civilian contractors that used to work there. Some of my buddies actually started doing that. They got out and got civilian contracting with CH-46s out in Afghanistan, which is a pretty cool gig for them that is now done. But they don't exist in the Marine Corps anymore. So they retired them 2 years after I lat moved. So yes, that was how I got into aircrew. It was a long journey. Little did I know, about 6 months after I checked in my first unit, which was in Okinawa, Japan, I was like, okay, it's been 2 years. I'm going to lat move to recon. So I talked to my staff sergeant. At the time, I got my plane captain qualification. I did all the qualifications so that they wouldn't be mad when I told them I was going to quit. And they're like, you need to be at a unit for 2 years before you can lat move.
Yep.
So that took me almost to 4 years, which then I just need to re-enlist to lat move, which is what I did.
Yeah.
But
that's pretty.
Yeah.
When you were going through the maintenance school, I was a mechanic for a little bit. So funny story. I probably told this a long time ago. I haven't talked about it in the podcast recently, but I was a lat mover also, came in open contract. And I told the fucking guy, I was like, because I wanted infantry. And he was like, look, man, it's not available, And this is like, I'm at MEPS getting ready to go to boot camp. Because they told me at my recruiting office I was good. And then I get to MEPS and I'm getting ready to get on the bus. They're like, so what job do you want to do? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, we got supply, we got admin. And I'm like, no way, man. I don't want to do any of that. I'm looking for infantry. And he's like, well, the best way to do that is to go open contract. And I'm like, dude, that sounds suspect. Like that doesn't sound legit. But he was like, that's the best thing you can do. And I was like, dude, I don't want to go open contract because I'll become a fucking cook or a goddamn mechanic. And I became a fucking mechanic. And I was like, damn it, And then for me, it was kind of mind blowing because I got to the maintenance school at Camp Johnson in North Carolina, And it was like day one, they're like, this is a screwdriver. This
Yes.
is a cross tip screwdriver. And I'm like, oh my God. Because there's people out there that have never even seen a tool before. You know, they don't know anything. But if you know anything about tools, you're like, Jesus Christ, this is as basic as it can be.
Yes. And that's when I first realized that every Marine Corps school, whether those that are listening right now that are about to join, everything is as basic and broken down as if you've never seen a tool in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's across the board with every MOS. Just because they're training as if you know nothing from the beginning. And if you know anything, it's like, what are you, yes, of course, is a Phillips screwdriver. I know what a hammer is. I know what, a wrench is, but they break it down to that level for those that don't know.
They got to start with the lowest denominator,
Yep.
Oh man, that's pretty wild. So, you talked about like there's a lot of maintenance and stuff. What percentage of your life was like doing maintenance?
A huge percentage. So that's something.
Because door gunner sounds like a cool job. If someone's like, "Hey, you want to go be a door gunner?" I'll be like, "Fuck yeah, give me that minigun, baby."
It's pretty sweet. So that single part of the job was awesome. Shooting machine guns out of the side of a helicopter is amazing. On a very heavy flight month, you're flying like 50 hours, and that was like as many hours as I was flying. That was like the top, and then there was months where I was flying 4 hours. But I think the 2 years I was in Okinawa, I worked 6 days a week for probably 14 to 16-hour days. So the work ethic of 2 years of that as a 19, 20, and 21-year-old was amazing, because that made my life in recon even easier than it. Not that it's easy, but that work ethic of like super long days of hard work. Because a mechanic's pretty rough. Like, hey, this engine on this aircraft needs fixed, or this part of the engine there, and then I have pretty small hands, and I'm torquing something and it slips and you punch the side and your hands are bleeding.
Oh yeah.
You're super greasy, fuel spilt all over your legs and arms and face, and smell like crap, sweating all day.
You make it sound so glamorous,
yeah. So that's something I would say to people is, I'd say a crew chief is the #1 enlisted job in the air wing, like the best job in the air wing. And if you enjoy working on your truck, car, whatever, any kind of mechanics at all, if you enjoy that, fixing things and repairing things like maintenance, and you get to fly, that's probably the best job you could ask for. If you're like me and don't enjoy the mechanic side so much, it's still a great job. It's just not as fun. It wasn't as fun for me, and I didn't love it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to love my job.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is why I moved to recon, which is what I wanted to do in the first place.
I was when I was a mechanic, I fucking hated it. I was like, dude, because I didn't want to be there. And you have the opportunity where you're working on this stuff and then flying it around, and you're involved with it. I was with maintenance battalion, where it was just trucks coming in from other units just to fix and go out the door. It was just a never-ending slog of replacing Humvee engines or 7 tons, that kind of shit. And it was just like, you never got clean. It would take 2 weeks of leave to get all the grease out of your fingers and shit like that and stuff. But I will say though, the good part about it is I can do almost pretty much any maintenance task I need to do on my car without having to go pay for it, because I understand mechanics now. Like before joining, I could like change my brake pads or like change my oil, but actually getting in and learning how to read the technical manuals, the TMs and stuff like that, and like the processes, and learning all the tools, like the more advanced tools, then it was like, oh man, I would never go pay to, replace my whatever, like name your task. It's just so easy. It's like a lot easier than you realize.
Yeah. I'd say if you enjoy that kind of work, you'll love your job in the air wing. But yeah, that's something about maintenance, is it never ends. You can never get ahead of it. No. You're always trying to keep up. So especially aircraft.
So it says here you were with the 31st MEU during, how do you say that, Operation
Tomodachi.
Tamadachi. So that's when they had the earthquake slash nuclear meltdown.
Yes.
So let's talk about that, man. What was that like? Because, being on this side of the world, it was like, holy shit, they're having a nuclear meltdown and like 100-foot waves and all this stuff going on at one time. Like, can you explain like what you saw when everything went down?
Yes. So I think it was March 2011. Earthquake followed by tsunamis and all that. When that happened, we were about 2 hours into Liberty in Malaysia, and you don't get a lot of Liberty on Muse.
No.
So about 2 hours in, we're supposed to be there for 4 days, and we got recalled immediately. So hey, no more free time. We're going to Japan to help out with this. So Malaysia's around the equator, is probably like 100 degrees when we were down there. And in about a day to a day and a half, it's snowing outside because we're just rocketing up in the ship as fast as we can. So it was a huge temperature change on the way up. On the way up, they were briefing us saying, especially the crew chiefs and the people that are going to be flying out, they're saying our job is likely to be finding and gathering bodies and loading them up in the back of the helicopter and flying them to, a gathering, a collection point and doing that for probably a few weeks. Luckily, selfishly for me, that wasn't the job we ended up doing, because I probably would have lost my mind, my sanity. But luckily, Japan did that the nation of Japan did that for themselves. And then what they asked the U.S. to do while we were there, so our ship was just floating off the coast of northern Japan, was to deliver hygiene equipment, since it was freezing cold and snowing in Japan at the time. A lot of blankets, water, lots of cases of bottles of water, and food. Because I think when it was all said and done, it was about 10,000 plus people dead. The ocean was so trashed from all the debris that the wave came in and basically ripped down miles of houses and then washed them back out to sea. So it looked like your bathtub would if you just dumped a bag of mulch in it. It was just pieces of house and things floating in the ocean. The ship was hitting it coming in, and it was just a mess. Boats were 1, 2, 3 miles inland, just flipped upside down on top of crushed houses, and very, very weird and just unbelievable looking. So along with that, after flying in a bunch of equipment, gear and stuff, and the Japanese people were very thankful for that job, and it was just nonstop flights in and out, doing that for probably 3 or 4 weeks. But the difficulty that added to that was all the radiation issues that we had to deal with, flying around radiation with the nuclear reactor that basically exploded. So every single time we left the ship and flew back in, we had to be scanned for radiation. So we were wearing masks, kind of like we are now, to cover the radiation from breathing it in, and then basically fully undressing, washing off, putting new clothes on, and then going into the interior of the ship. I think there was one ship, I forget the name of it, is an aircraft carrier. I think it's the Reagan or something like that, that got infected with radiation, and it went throughout the ship, and it caused a lot of issues for them. But I think the worst part was taking out and doing maintenance. So we grab our toolbox, we have rubber gloves, big rubber boots, hazmat, like full hazmat suits, and masks, going out to do maintenance. And forgot a screwdriver. Go back to the other entrance, get fully radiation scanned, take all that gear off, wash it, go inside, grab your screwdriver, put all that back on, and go back out again and work. So and anytime you had to come in to sign something or check new tools out or grab something else, it was full undress, full dress all day for 12, 14 hours a day that we're working on that shift. So that was difficult. And I don't know if you remember the hazmat suit, big black rubber
Yeah.
gloves we had,
Yeah.
working with tiny little safety wire and little bolts and nuts and bolts and stuff with those huge gloves on was almost impossible. So along with flying in and stuff, which that was the first time I felt like my job in the Marine Corps was meaningful beyond training and fixing aircraft. Maintenance, hey, it's fixed, it's going out and fly, come back, kind of like with the trucks you're talking about. You're just fixing things and it goes out and you don't see what it's doing, what those trucks are doing. But it was seeing the people of Japan happy to see us getting the stuff that they needed, and actually providing humanitarian support for a country that was just crushed at the time was very, very meaningful. And like, it was something that if I didn't ever do anything else, even if I got out and didn't do recon or whatever, it was enough for me to be like, okay, I did something good for the world. So that was a good experience. It was hard to see. There were times like in that all that debris in the ocean where we saw some bodies and tried to call people to get recovery of those things, and it was a tough time, a shock to see, but I was glad I was a part of it and was able to help at the.
Were you were you guys concerned with the radiation? Like, were you like, hey man, we might be killing ourselves right now, but we got to keep going? Like, was that kind of the thing, or like how bad was the concern? I mean, obviously it was bad enough where your Seaburn guys had a full washdown setup. So,
Oh yes, it was a huge concern at the start. Like the first month or two we were there. The first month we were there, it was like you're scanning everything. It was hours of, we washed the aircraft every like 2-3 times a day to get all this radiation debris and stuff off. But then it kind of came out that it was particles, it was like dust. You could just wash the radiation away, and as long as it didn't get into your lungs, you're probably okay.
you're probably okay.
Probably okay. Yeah, it was kind of like that. Like, there's nothing we can do about it. We have to be here. There was like kind of distance bubbles we'd fly around, like kind of like a 6 foot,
Yeah.
just like stay this far away from the nuclear reactor, and we'd like make our flight routes based on that. And so we weren't like flying into the heart of where the nuclear reactor was, but we were definitely in some radiation zones.
Could
As
you
with
see
it,
the reactor from where you were flying in? Did you ever see it?
I didn't see it. No,
No.
I don't know exactly
Probably
how
smart.
close we were to it. Yeah, but I think there's it was just cool to see because I grew up in Hawaii and I didn't see snow until I was 9 years old.
Hmm.
And when I saw snow, there was no ocean next to it. But I think it was the first time I saw like just a ton of snow right next to the beach, which was very, it's just a different world when I got there.
Yeah.
And then with miles and miles of houses that are not houses anymore, it's just chips of wood all scattered all over the place and in the ocean. It was just different, tough to see. But as far as the radiation went, they took it seriously. We wore our gear. We got constantly checked, and then we had like health assessments after the deployment up until I checked out. And once I checked out of that unit in Japan, which is like 2012, I've never been checked for radiation again. I don't know if they just forgot if it's my medical record or not, but
I was gonna say, I feel like that's something you might want to make sure is in your record before you get out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll
Dang.
we look into it. So
I think that's a great example of like, so there's so many people out there that are ignorant of the military, that they think everyone in the military is like infantry and the only job is to go kill people. And it's like, bro, there's so much humanitarian stuff. Like, there's guys in Haiti right now. How often have we seen anything about Haiti on the news, and about the Navy and the Marines and everybody that's down there right now supporting Haiti? There's like it's not on the news at all. But that's one of these missions. you know, like going out and helping these people like that. Like that's, you know, I wish more people knew about things like that. You know, I think some people kind of learned more when they brought in those hospital ships during COVID. People are like, oh yeah, hey, we got these things. Like we don't just go and smoke people. These are like things that we, you know, try to help out. So that's a perfect example of, you know, immediate reaction. You're on Libo, 2 hours into Libo, get the phone call. You probably thought they were fucking around at first, right? When they were like,
Oh
hey,
yeah,
like shut
everybody
up.
come back. Yeah, that's exactly how it went. They're like, hey, everybody come back. We Libo's done. They're like, no, it's not. So people were. It kind of took a while to gather all the Marines and the sailors, because some people were just like, I'm not listening to that. And
Yeah,
just
they're
kept.
probably like, fuck this. I'm gonna get some beers before they can find me.
Yeah, and that's pretty much how it went down. Shore patrol had to like round people up, and that was an impossible thing. It took. We didn't leave till the next morning. I'll just say that.
But
It took a
still,
while.
though, I mean, thousands of Marines and sailors, you
Oh, it's
gather
hard.
them up in what 15 hours, and you know you're on the way out. Like the
Yeah,
response, it's hard to match something like that.
yeah, it was quick. Yeah, we were. I think we got let off the ship around noon, and we had everyone back that before midnight. So just a few hours, but everyone's trying to get a beer in.
Yeah, for sure.
We're heading back. Yeah, because
So
we didn't know.
so after that, you said you went to Marine One.
Yes.
How was that? Like, tell us. Again, you're the first person I've talked to that's done something like that. So, one, how do you? I assume you have to apply for that. I imagine it's not just orders, right?
Yes, so they actually go out and recruit all over. So they recruit from every platform. There was 46s, Hueys, Cobras, 53s, B-22s. They recruit from every platform. They're trying to find good crew chiefs and pilots that, you know, do their job well and also can get a top secret clearance, hopefully. And they'll go to those people first, and then hopefully those people will fill out an application, so that it's like finding good people and having those good people fill out applications, and then from that pool they'll kind of take a few others. So I had a few buddies from flight school that were already over there, and they kind of wanted me. They're like, hey, come on out, it's a good job, it's really fun. And so I fill out an application. When they came recruiting, they came all the way to Japan. I was in Okinawa still. And I filled out an application, and then shortly after, a few months later, I got orders out there. So I went to Marine One, which is a whole different world in itself. I happened to be there. I checked in 2012, which was President Obama's re-election year at the time. And that allowed me to fly pretty much to anywhere he was campaigning. So I had never traveled the United States at all. It was my first time to New York, to Chicago, to like Nashville, a lot of cities in the United States and states that I had never been to, and I got to pretty much go to those places, stay in nice hotels, get paid per diem for where I was at, which is just like an allowance based on where you're staying.
Yeah.
So, that was a high end unit, top secret level, White House kind of stuff. There's so much moving parts. A lot about presidency I had no idea even happened. I feel like every minute of their lives is scheduled.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's just so crazy. And then the amount of logistics to support any kind of movement, whether, they have to do the motorcade and the helicopters and Air Force One, the planes, depending on how far they're flying and all that. And then
Pre-position security and everything else. Yeah.
air security, they shut down a certain amount of miles for where civilians can't fly near you, and then there's, jets watching the flights and making sure that no one's trying to, mess up anything about the travel the entire time. So that was a really cool thing. I actually re-enlisted for recon from there. I was in Hawaii at the time. President Obama went to Hawaii for Christmas every year.
Mm-hmm.
Where my family was, so I got to go on that trip, which was awesome. I had Christmas with my family and got paid to do it, so that was
Can't be mad about that.
pretty good gig. So they're like, hey, do you want to reenlist? I'm like, Marine Corps is pretty awesome. I enjoy this job. But I put in for recon at that time, and I was like, if I get a recon contract, I'm staying in. If I don't, I'm getting out. I actually applied to a few colleges, got into those. So I had my options there, but I got the recon contract accepted, did the lap move, and then I had orders pretty much immediately to ITB. I think I checked an ITB in March, and I reenlisted in like just the end of December during that Christmas trip. So
That's crazy, man.
it was a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah. So when you were flying around with the president, though, like, one, I assume the helicopter is super nice on the inside. There's no like,
Oh yeah,
there's no grease dripping and stuff like that, like gear oil dripping out of stuff.
no. So on the 46, so the president flies two different helicopters.
They just got a new one, right?
Yeah, well, they replaced the 46 with a 22.
Okay.
So they have some 22s, but I know that president flies like an H3. I don't know what they call that, like and then 60, like a Black Hawk.
Mm-hmm.
They're all green and white. You see them on TV all the time. See the Marines saluting the president coming on and off. That's actually a crew chief doing that. So to be a Marine One crew chief, you have to be there for a couple years, and then other crew chiefs kind of vote you in to obtain that job. And there's a certain number. I don't know if I can say how many there are, but there's a certain number of them, and they're, that job for probably a year before they get replaced. What my best buddy, we went to boot camp together. All those schools I had to go through, flight school and everything. He was actually the Marine that Obama forgot to salute, if anyone remembers that. He has a picture in his house where Obama's shaking his hand, apologizing for not saluting him, which is pretty funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was actually never the Marine One crew chief because I wasn't there that long. I think I was there for 2 years, and 6 months of those I was at ITB and BRC.
Oh, okay.
So if they let me finish out my 3-year contract there, I would have possibly been a Marine One crew chief. But I was usually flying in the support like extras aircraft behind, flying camera crews and other VIPs that weren't the president. But even in those aircraft, we laid down and vacuumed the carpet on the floor. We had nice like vinyl inside, very nice cushions for the seating. We had the buckles all like buckled up and laid out nice with ear pro ready to go for anyone that's sitting in there. And then even in the actual Marine One helicopters, even nicer. So
are they a lot quieter than your regular helicopter?
They're a lot quieter, but they're still not super quiet.
Okay.
It's hard to drown out a helicopter's noise, but they definitely are quieter. Especially the Marine, like the 60 and the H3, those are pretty quiet. They do a good job with those, but yeah, they're still loud.
having that kind of background, like glimpse into, you got to peek behind the curtain of the life of a president. No matter your politics, I don't really care about that. Did it give you any kind of like compassion for the office, or like, man, that sucks, or like, man, the media is really fucking them right now, that's not what actually happened? Like, did you see a lot of like, this is what actually happened and this is what's being reported and like all that weird stuff?
There's a little bit of that. I wouldn't say I was like deep into the politics at the time. I was kind of just like flying around. I still had 12-hour work days where I'm doing maintenance and kind of focusing on that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you see a little bit into that. Like, okay, that's not what happened at all. With politics or whatever, but also just the fact that how busy and scheduled their lives are. It's almost like they probably have some say in what they do. But it feels like they're just getting shuttled around and being told to do things most of their time in office. So
for sure.
It's just so amazing. There's a whole state of people probably just making sure the presidency goes well, and like such a huge support financially, personnel, to like get the president from here to there. Just, hey, the president needs to go from the White House to this office in Florida. And
Yeah.
just the amount of ahead of time work, because there's helicopters are flying ahead of him, days in advance, to be ready in case he's in a location. And if he doesn't show up, then that whole trip out as a crew chief was for nothing, So there's just so much money and scheduling and so much things that are happening and changing. And then if something, like a natural disaster happens, and people are like, the president wasn't there right away, and it's probably because they had to reschedule and shift things around, and they get there a few days later.
Yeah.
And it's just, yeah, there's a little bit of insight to that.
I couldn't imagine being like the chief of staff or something, the guy that has to like make sure all that stuff's working, like scheduling and all that stuff so the president doesn't have to worry about it. That's got to be just you never turn off. You could probably never have your phone off. You never have any private time, never personal time. It's probably just like a constant, man. That'd be rough. So let's talk about your lap move to Recon. So you wanted to come in Recon, didn't get it, started out as aircrew, and you finally got your opportunity. Were you like, fuck yeah, I'm pumped? Were you like nervous? Like, how'd you feel getting, into that first day of your lap move?
Well, I didn't expect to get orders to ITB so fast. So that was crazy.
Infantry training battalion. Yeah.
Thank goodness I went to that first, because I just been eating pizza in Chicago and New York for the last year and a half on a campaign trail. So
That's funny.
I wasn't quite ready physically. If I went straight to BRC after getting orders, that would have been terrible. But luckily I went to ITB, got in some pretty good shape there, relearned some things that I learned at MCT, which that right there, an argument is, I feel like you don't learn anything more at ITB than you do at MCT.
Oh, really?
I didn't. I felt like I learned less at ITB.
Really?
Than I did at MCT, but yes.
That's crazy.
At MCT, we went through all the weapon systems. At ITB, since I went through an 0311 package, I didn't learn any machine guns. I think and that's when the IAR first came out. So I got to shoot the IAR. I think that was the first year it was out, is in early 2013.
Yeah.
It might have been around 2012, and got to shoot that. But other than that, it was pretty much, it's basic infantry, pretty basic. But yeah, checked in there, got a little bit in shape. Still pretty nervous about going to BRC. The monitor at the time called me probably 3 or 4 times and saying, "Hey, you know how to swim, right?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm a pretty good swimmer. I grew up surfing," and I felt pretty confident about swimming at the time. And then I get to BRC and I'm like, okay, maybe I don't know how to swim that great. I've been pounded by 30-foot waves on the North Shore of Hawaii, and thank goodness, because I felt about as panicked as that in some of the pool evolutions. So that's something I highly recommend to people, is no matter how comfortable you are on the water, you need to be swimming a lot and working on your swimming and your ability.
Wouldn't you say, like, can you replicate the swimming that you're going to be doing? Because what's harder, the pool workouts and stuff like that, or doing your open water stuff?
So open water was super easy for me because I grew up surfing.
Yeah.
Just breaking surf, duck dives, and getting through some rough water, probably some of the roughest waves in the world. So I had a lot of good experience with that. For me personally, the deep end of the pool with bricks was where I struggled, because I'm actually super negatively buoyant. So adding a brick on top of me just struggling to tread myself was something I had to get used to. Obviously, I did, and I was fine, but that was more of a struggle for me. I have seen a lot of people struggle more in the open water and through the waves and surf and getting tossed around by currents and stuff. And usually I was the guy on my team and as a person, as an instructor at BRC, to talk people through surf and get them confident and just reading the waves and all that kind of stuff. So I say I was a big asset in surf when I was on the teams. But yeah, it just depends on your experience level and where you kind of grew up. And some people that played like water polo, for instance, didn't struggle at all in the deep end of the pool. It's still difficult and their hearts are racing and it's an extra, it's a hard workout, but it's nothing they didn't do in practice for water polo or whatever. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think it depends on where you're at. But yeah, I told the monitor, I was like, yeah, I'm good in the water. I'll be fine. And then I got there and it was tough for me. So
That's pretty awesome. So you actually wrote a book called All It Takes: Become a Recon Marine. And you were an instructor at BRC before you started MECEP. So I'd like to get a good kind of explanation of what people can expect going into BRC, the basic reconnaissance course, and the different evolutions, how they can probably prepare best, and maybe some other resources outside your book. I know we talked before we got online about how BRC actually has their own Instagram page now where they post up a lot of stuff showing people going through the actual training. So if you want to start from phase 1, or do you guys have you guys do the pre-BRC, right? Like the holding platoon where they're getting ready. You want to talk through that?
Yes. So yeah, pre-BRC, they've changed the name for that. It was MART for a while, then it's BRPC, and I think it's RTAP now. It could be something different tomorrow. So I just call it pre-BRC. What to expect from that was what used to be in first phase, which was the pool PT, land navigation, and knots. So a lot of that is in pre-BRC now. So tying the knots, that knot test is in pre-BRC, which you get tons of practice on. If you fail knots, it's your fault because you get probably 4 hours a day and you have a rope on you 24 hours a day to practice with. You just tie knots over and over again all day. Anytime you have a break between 2 hour to 3 hour PT sessions in the morning and 4 hour swim session in the afternoon, you're tying knots. So that's pretty easy if you give it the time it deserves.
Are these similar knots to you would get in Hearst if you're going through the Hearst course, or is it more advanced knots?
Yes, they're similar knots as helicopter rope suspension training. I think Hearst. Yeah, so they're like square knot, bowling with a bite. All like your basic. I think it's like 8 or 15 knots, somewhere between there. I have them all listed in my book. They're basic. They're very easy knots to learn. The thing that makes the test hard is having the right lengths on your pigtails, which are the remainder ends of the knots of the rope at the end of your knots. So tying your knots precisely is what makes it difficult. The knots themselves aren't difficult. And the time limits is what makes it a little bit more stressful. So you have 30 seconds to tie a square knot with safeties, and the pigtails, which are the ends, can't be any longer than your fist and thumb. So learning the knot's not going to take long. It's practicing and making sure you have the right lengths at the end is what becomes a skill in itself. But yeah, that's in pre-BRC now. The swim qualifications, I think Water Survival Advanced, which you do some rescues, so basic Marine Corps swim qual, that is in pre-BRC. Land navigation is now in pre-BRC, which you get a bunch of classes, a lot of practice reps to do that. And then once you graduate that, you start your actual basic reconnaissance course in first phase, which is your individual skills phase.
When you're doing the land nav, are you doing traditional land nav with a pace counter and doing all of that, or are you doing dead reckoning where you're just kind of moving, reading the terrain as you move?
It's a little bit of both. It's more advanced than what guys are doing in boot camp, like dead reckoning with, here's your azimuth, 360 buoys, whatever, and go for 100 meters. It's going to be a little bit of finessing with terrain association, knowing where you are based on your map and what you see out there, which is helpful in Camp Pendleton because you can actually see mountain ranges and hilltops and a lot of good terrain features to associate from.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit of more advanced skill in the land navigation than what guys are learning at, let's say, OCS or boot camp. And the instructors do a very good job of teaching how to use techniques and things like pace count and terrain association to find your point. And if you're near it, a bunch of different techniques to search that area a little bit better. And then you do that in the daytime, and then you go into nighttime. So you're going to be able to do this stuff at night as well by the end of your training. That's something I think a lot of people should know is instructors and the school itself want people to succeed. So they're going to teach, they're not going to just not tell you how to find a point in a class. They're going to teach you as best as they can. And it really is on you whether you take in that knowledge and use it to be successful. So no one's out to get you and make sure you get lost so you don't graduate or something like that. It's good skills that you can build on even further after you graduate, or even at a different MOS. Let's say you don't graduate. It's good. Land navigation applies pretty much everywhere. So that's done in the pre-BRC now.
Okay. And so let's move into your first days of BRC. Are you going right into the pool, or what's that first phase like?
Yeah, so depending on when you check in, some people will still go to MART, which is Marines Awaiting Recon Training. And that'll be a holding phase, whether you're waiting for pre-BRC or whether you've graduated pre-BRC, and you're waiting to go to BRC. It's kind of like an in-between spot. And whether you're getting there for the first time and waiting on BRC or pre-BRC, you're going to be in the pool learning how BRPC runs, pre-BRC, or you're going to be maintaining and staying strong in the pool for BRC. So that's where MART is just kind of like a maintain and stay strong when you can, and then also some working parties and maybe some field day and cleaning and stuff like that. And then once you most of the time in the pool is during MART and pre-BRC. And once you graduate pre-BRC, a lot of the pool stuff in first phase, second, and third phase is to maintain where you are. A lot of fins in the pool to make sure that you can fin with a ruck and all that for amphib phase, and then also to prep you for dive school in the future. So a lot of the pool training within BRC is to make you faster for amphib phase or to prep you for dive school, which a lot of guys are doing right after BRC now. So just staying strong in the pool and with fins for those future evolutions, because the water never ends after graduation. So you're Recon Marine now. You're gonna be in and out of the water forever, or until you retire. So
yeah, that is your life now.
Yes. And they try to maintain that throughout the whole course. But it's the difficult initial tough pool stuff is going to be in pre-BRC now.
What percentage of the guys that you drop come from that portion right there? Because the pool's like the great equalizer, right?
It is, for sure. The numbers can range from like 20% drops to 80% drops. It just depends on what kind of group is coming in and how strong they are and what their previous experiences are. I'd say that BRC's kind of messed with numbers a little bit. So they put a lot of the training that a lot of people failed, like knots, land navigation, and swim call, in pre-BRC, so that if they're failing in pre-BRC, it doesn't look like nobody's graduating BRC, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the drop rate in BRC is actually less than what reality shows. I think that's just a whole training and education command issue. Something I think every special operations command across all branches is kind of experiencing is the government and military wants a lot of special forces, special operations capable individuals, and they're pushing for higher numbers. And the reality is you can't make good special operations individuals by accepting everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit of fight and messing with numbers, I'd say, in that aspect. But we're still getting highly qualified graduates at a higher rate.
Well, that's probably better anyway than them getting started into BRC itself.
Yes.
And then failing along the way at something that could have been identified early.
Exactly. It's getting a lot of the failed events out of the way. So it's definitely putting a higher quality candidate into BRC than what used to be going in. So it's definitely helpful. And I think that also allowed the course to be a little bit longer. So the BRC's course overall has stayed the same length, but they added time to the overall pipeline by adding a prep course that gets land navigation, swim qual, and knots out of the way. So it's not even part of the course anymore, but it's still testable items to get into the course.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense. So
does that make it easier? Like, let's say someone shows up and they're not really prepared, as well prepared as they should be, and they fail the pre-BRC. Does that make it easier to try again rather than like maybe failing something in BRC? I don't know how that works for guys that tap out or don't make it through an evolution.
I think your pre-BRC drops also kind of count towards your BRC drops. I don't want students or future candidates to game the game, but there are some. There's ways to be dropped and recycled multiple times, depending on what you're dropped for. So if you're dropped for medical reasons, it doesn't count against you as much. If you're dropped for failing a test, that it counts a certain point system against you. So I think the most you could go through get recycled, and this includes BRC and pre-BRC total, is like 3 times. But you could technically only get one chance or no chances, depending on what exactly you are getting dropped for.
Yeah.
So if you're getting dropped for like drinking in the barracks underage, you're not gonna get another shot. That's like breaking Marine Corps rules and things like that, which you're not gonna get another shot from there. But if you're failed like a knot test, you're gonna get probably a retest. And if you fail a retest, you'll probably start BRPC over, and then you pretty much have to go through the whole course that way. So there's ways, and it's pretty nuanced, and depending on what it is, people can work around things. So I'd say if you're a future candidate, don't worry about getting dropped so much for whatever reason. Just take the failure, learn from it, recycle, and do your best the next time, because that's all you can do.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Yeah, just take it, learn from it, and keep going. So, yeah.
So so we talked about the first phase, talked about pre-BRC. What's the second phase, and how is that kind of broken down?
So second phase, as of now, is patrolling. It used to be third phase, but now it's second. So patrolling phase, after individual skills, which I think we briefly discussed, you get to do some shooting now.
Okay.
Some breaching, like setting up claymores, demolitions, a little bit of spy rigging, like where you hook up to the bottom of their helicopter and fly on the road. Yeah. So that's all individual skills. And then once you get into patrol phase, there's basic recon patrolling beyond the stuff you learn at ITB infantry training, just because we do it different in recon.
Mm-hmm.
And then through there, you're going to learn how to use radios, communications equipments, how to set up and make antennas, how to use cameras, photography, Photoshop, all the equipment that recon guys use. That's night vision, different optics and scopes and weapon systems and kind of all that stuff. The basic, cover and concealment, recon surveillance type patrolling missions within that phase. And then once that phase is done, that's when you're going to go down to Coronado for the amphib phase.
For the second phase, what's probably what part do most people have the problem with? Like, what should someone prepare for before going into that, or can you?
To prepare for that's when a lot of hiking is going to be happening. So a lot of heavy rucks with a lot of equipment, walking over very steep and rough terrain. There's a lot of prep going into that from BRPC to first phase, and then continuing into second phase. You're going to be doing ruck runs pretty much weekly up until then. So by the time you get there, you should be used to it, but it's still going to be a lot more weight than was required before reaching there. So I think before you start 25, 35, and 45-pound rucks, and then once you start carrying that equipment, cameras, radios, batteries, all that stuff, it starts getting closer to 60 to 100 pounds, usually around 80 pounds on your back during patrols. A lot of things people struggle with there is becoming very fatigued, staying up all night after walking 8 to 10 miles through rough terrain with 80 pounds on your back, and staying focused on your objective over lots and lots of days. Starts revealing some character flaws from people. Some people get tired and cranky and angry and snap at each other, and kind of dealing with that team dynamic that's difficult for guys that have never experienced it before. It's a very big test of individual character, I'd say, that people struggle with. Also, falling asleep on security is a pretty big deal. That's something you could definitely fail that phase for. So just dealing with fatigue, knowing how to manage and work within a team, communicate well within a team during stressful and difficult duties that you'll have within that phase. So I'd say that that's pretty much most of the struggle there, is making sure you learn enough in LANAP to actually get where you need to go. Actually testing your equipment and making sure it works before you go out.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are like, oh, it'll work. It worked 5-10 minutes ago. It'll work. Well, it'll work in 10 hours when I get there. Not taking shortcuts or just assuming things. It's always being on top of stuff, being organized, and being able to function within a team effectively when under a lot of stress and a huge lack of sleep. So that's the struggle there.
A lot of schools have a like, hey, we're going to teach you. This is how we're learning it for the school. This is whatever. And then when you get to your unit, you're going to learn the real way to do it. Would you consider BRC to be something like that? Or are you guys pretty, the weight you're carrying, the things you're carrying, is it pretty similar to what you would see in the fleet?
I'd say it's very similar. They try to make it as close to the fleet as possible, even down to the gear. So when the recon battalions are getting new equipment and optics and that kind of stuff, cameras, whatever it is, that stuff's going to go to BRC pretty much as soon as possible, like within a few months. So they're going to have the most up-to-date gear. It's probably the same gear you're going to use out in the fleet. There might be a thing here and there that was different at BRC, depending on when those changes happened. But the weight's pretty similar. At BRC, we don't allow people to cut on water or food that you might be able to out in the fleet, but that's even a maybe depending on what unit you're at.
Mm-hmm.
And how the team SOPs are. But pretty much as close to the real thing as you can get while training. I'd say the only thing that's definitely very different is the 550 cord safety in all the pockets and all the gear. So I don't know if you remember that, but just 550 cording,
Yeah, all
everything.
the boots have to do that to make sure they don't lose anything. For people that
We
don't know
don't.
what we're talking about,
Yeah.
tie in NVGs to something, tie in your compass to something. Everything's tied off so you don't drop it. Especially, I mean, you guys are moving at night, carrying a bunch of shit. You wouldn't even
Yes.
realize if you drop something out of your pocket, and until too late.
Yes. Yeah.
What's your take on? I mean, you're talking carrying heavy loads. Like 80 pounds is a lot. 80 pounds of lightweight gear is still 80 pounds.
Yeah.
And do you think? I don't know, man. At what point is it too much? Are we carrying too much shit to be ready for too many possibilities over like being stealthy and being able to move quickly? That's something you guys have to debate quite a bit within the community.
That's something I debated with my own team when I was, at First Recon Battalion. As I was a radio operator on my first team, so I had to carry 2 radios sometimes and 2 tough books, which is just like an outdoor computer for those who don't know, um, and all the batteries for it, and the 3 different types of antennas, whether it's satellite antenna or HF high frequency, like all those, every single kind of contingency option that you could have. The officers and people in charge want to make sure that if anything goes wrong, there's a backup to a backup, and that's all extra gear you got to carry out. And I'd say even in the fleet, I had this argument within teams of like, okay, when is this too much? When is it where I'm setting up, an office outside and I have to stay hidden?
Yeah.
And it's just it's a battle I feel like is probably still happening. Because new equipment comes out and nobody wants to drop the old stuff, because what if the new stuff breaks? So we got to carry all of it out. And I think that's communication from, high to low and low to high with your, officers and platoon sergeants and all that, and your team leaders, and, actually marking down what you didn't use each and every patrol during training. Like, hey, I didn't use this the last 6 times we went out. Can I drop it and not bring it? And having that conversation, so that we're more efficient. And it's been 5 years since I've gone on a recon surveillance patrol, because I was an instructor for so long. I've been in school for another 2 years already. So I don't, maybe those things are changing, gears getting lighter and stuff like that, but I kind of doubt it.
The gear gets lighter, but they add another piece of gear they got to carry on top, so nothing changes.
Exactly. It's from what I've seen, it's pretty much stayed the same weight, which is always too much. And I was definitely one of those guys that's like, hey, let's question this weight a little bit.
Yeah.
We got a long way to walk, and I don't think I need all this. But
Yeah, I like how you said you don't, you're basically, at what point are we setting up an office outside? Because that's, I mean, when you guys are doing some of your surveillance stuff, that's what it requires, because you're sending photos back, you're doing all these different things that require different types of electronics that are all have to be carried out and then set up and then hidden.
Yep, and there's cables running everywhere, from the antenna to the tough book to the radio and then it's just,
your footprint becomes so big. It's like, are we really like hiding at this point?
yes.
I'm sure you guys
So
still do a great job of it, but that's got to be tough.
it gets difficult, especially when numbers start increasing and things. Individuals, whether it's a 6 to an 8-man team, it makes a big difference. 4-man team, big difference. So everything is considered. And it's great when you get 4-man team to an 8-man team, because then your packs should be getting lighter in that scenario. They don't always, but then you have to hide 8 guys, and that's even more difficult. So there's a give and take in everything, every decision that we make out there.
Yeah. So after that phase, so after the second phase, we're out on your feet and doing that stuff, moving around. You move into the Coronado and the amphib phase, which is what a lot of people see. The dude struggling to get through the break on the boats and stuff like that. So you want to talk about that phase, kind of some of the different training that goes through there, and some tips for guys that may be heading that way.
Yeah, amphib phase I think was my favorite. Just going up surfing and being in and out of the water all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's not everybody's. It is freezing, depending on what time of the year you're going there, even in the summer.
Yeah.
So dealing with cold, dealing with energy being pulled from your body from, being pushed around by current, waves, the temperatures, all that stuff. what you're going to be learning there is how to build up and break down a Zodiac, the rubber boats that we have, how to troubleshoot and operate an engine for those boats, how to navigate using charts rather than maps, which is a nautical map, using lights from buoys and uh, compasses and times, watches, and things are called, what do they call them, widgets or whatever. So weird nautical tools that are very out of date. I think just like with land navigation, use a map, compass, and protractor. You learn the basics that way, but in reality, uh, you have a GPS for most missions. The same goes for nautical navigation, but it's good to know the basics in case that technology fails.
Mm-hmm.
And then just breaking surf without engines, call it engine appreciation. So paddles, probably seen a lot of videos of that. Depending on when you go, there could be swells that are just crushing you, or not. It could be flat and you have an easy day paddling out and going around a buoy and coming back in. Covering concealment when you get onto the beach, getting wet, getting sandy, call it sugar cooking, all that stuff. Not finning, so just having your pack and fins in full camis with a rifle, going about 2,000 meters, of 1,000 meters there and back, out in the ocean, just for scout swimming techniques, and anything and everything that has to do with water. Oh, and hydrographic surveys. So that's where we're mapping the bottom of the ocean on the shoreline and out to the surf zone, so that boats that come in know not to hit the bottom of the reef or a sandbar or things like that. So that's just reconnaissance of the beach, the surf, what's under the water, what's on the beach, and obstacles like that for beach landings in case we need to invade or enter from the sea for battle. So learning all of that will be going on in amphib phase. That it can be fun depending on your mentality and mindset, or it can be miserable for the same reasons. And that's the end. Once you graduate from there, that phase is, it's all over, until you go to the next school and you just keep grinding. So yeah.
So for you, once you finished BRC and you're like, "Fuck, I made it!" Like I finally, you met that goal. How did that feel for you?
That's a great feeling, because of what it takes to get to that point. It's just everything you have, like your full heart and soul into something. When you put your everything into something and then finally achieve that goal, I think that's like the meaning of life right there. That's like,
Mm-hmm.
you get such a good, you feel euphoric feeling of achieving what you set out to do. So it's a good feeling, but it does go away. Now you got to find something else to strive for. So it's great when it happens. Celebrate that, be proud of yourself. You did something that not a lot of people can do or are even willing to try to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say take a moment, appreciate what you did to get to where you are, but then it continues. There's that saying, prove yourself every day and earn it every day. Hardest day was yesterday, that's the SEAL saying. So like it does continue. You definitely need to realize that, hey, that was just training. Now I have the title. Now I got to continue learning. You got to get better. There's so much to improve. You can always get faster. You can always shoot more accurately and more tactically. There's a lot more tactics and skills to learn. You just were at basic reconnaissance course. There's so much to follow. So it's exciting knowing that all that's out there, but it's still as difficult as the course was. And looking back at the course, that was not that bad. It was kind of fun to look back on, and it definitely gets harder.
It's got to be, a unit like Recon where everyone there is a volunteer. Everyone there went through, a haze fest to make it. They all proved themselves. Being in a unit like that is complete. It's like a complete. It's got to be a completely different Marine Corps, right? Because you're looking around, and just seeing other people and how good they are. It's like you never want to be the guy that's slowing the team down, or you never want to be the slowest guy. But in this group, you're in a group of no one's slow anyway. So your slowest guy is still really fucking fast. So it's like that constant inspiration and challenging yourself to keep up with all this greatness that's around you has got to be like a whole nother culture for you compared to what you had, at the air wing, right?
Yeah. There's definitely a higher standard being upheld. There's a self motivation that comes from that group influence of, hey, if you know in yourself you're not being your best, then that's disappointing your brothers that are being their best for you. So there's a motivation inward and outward constantly to always strive to be better. There's a lot of competition everywhere. Like there's, just looking back on my team, who I still keep in contact with now pretty regularly. We had our best shooter. We had our guy that could always get calm on the radio no matter what. We had our fastest finners. We had guys that, we could get through the surf because they understood the waves and could read them and manipulate that. We had guys that, there's just, everyone has their best thing. And then there's the thing that, hey, you're not the best. You're not doing so well with this. You're like, falling behind the rest of your team in this aspect. And now you're just striving to be better at that, even though you might be the best shooter, but you're the slowest runner on your team, so you're just constantly working and getting better, even though you're fast comparatively to the rest of the Marine Corps. That effort to strive to be the best, even among the best, is what makes those units different. That's not seen, I think, in a lot of other MOSs. Because you didn't do anything to get that job. Or, I mean, you went to a school that everyone graduates, and you may or may not have had to try very hard. So there's nothing. You did a lot of those jobs. You have to prove yourself. You'll still find friends. You'll still find excellent Marines for sure. There's Marines that could have probably done special operations, recon, or all that. They just never, tried out for that job. That do a great job, with whatever they're doing. But there is something different to those that do make the attempt and make it. And being among that crowd or that group of guys is a different feeling for sure. Yeah.
And I know you went to TCP school and stuff like that. And the best way I can relate to something like that is a debrief of JTACs. Once you guys go out to the hill or you guys go do training and stuff like that, it's all like big boy rules, and it doesn't really, rank doesn't matter when we're debriefing. And it's like, hey man, I'm going to tell you what you fucked up, and you got to be prepared to hear that and like then take that and figure it out, and I'm going to tell you what you did great. And it's like that open conversation of, this is what we really need to fix. This is how you did. This is the good. This is the bad. And where a lot of times you see in like other units and stuff or jobs where it's just like, whatever, man, it's kind of sugar coated. You did okay. It'll be fine. When you get into these serious jobs, and I'm not saying the other jobs aren't serious, but as a JTAC, if you fuck up, you're dropping a bomb on the wrong thing, which is obviously not good. You have to be able to have that like thick skin to take, that feedback of like, you could have done this better, or this is how we can do it faster, and not be egotistical. Is that something, you think that's kind of the same way with all your other skills that you're learning with Recon?
Yes. Yeah. I think, especially when you get into jobs where life and death is a very real possibility, like at any time, whether it's training or an actual deployment or mission. That's something I will say I got in the air wing pretty well. Was, we had guys crash helicopters. We've had decisions, like I free fell while on a test flight for 2,000 feet.
Oh shit, really?
like randomly. Yeah, I had a couple multiple, or I had two almost midair collisions with civilian aircraft that didn't report themselves. Things like that. When life and death in the aircraft in flight, there is no rank. If me as a lance corporal in the back says pull up or stop right, as we're hovering, that captain in the front is going to listen to my order to him, because it's just all our lives are at stake in that moment. So I'll say I definitely had that was a good foundation for me, which I think helped with JTAC, that TAC P element, just being very serious about your job and the risks involved, and holding people accountable for their bad decisions, is very important in those jobs, which is why I always say, like, hey, aircrew is probably the best enlisted job you can get in the air wing, and I feel like I had the best enlisted job I can get on the ground side. Like, I've been lucky. I've had like two very difficult, high demand, high responsibility MOSs on both sides, which have helped develop me in a good way, I think. So I'm pretty proud of that. But yeah, JTAC, there's a little bit of added pressure on there. I think that's the most stressed I've ever been in any aspect of my job.
Really?
Yeah, just I'd say, especially learning having multiple sections of aircraft under your control, and developing a control to drop bombs with a simultaneous or follow on a gun run or whatever. Like, that whole process of communicating that over the radio was always like high stress for me.
Oh yeah.
But once those rounds hit, it was like the greatest feeling.
You're like,
so,
fuck yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like that feeling with graduating BRC. Like, you put all this work in, and it's super high stress, and you're feeling that pressure, but once it hits, it's a great feeling. It's worth every second.
Yeah.
But it takes some effort, and a good head on your shoulders to make that kind of stuff happen.
Yeah, I always told people I knew good dudes that went to TACP school that didn't pass, and that's only because, like you were saying, the high stress. The person, to be able to pass TACP school, you have to be able to take in a bunch of information from a bunch of different people in different areas and translate that onto your map, and then translate that into like a good control. For those that don't know what I'm talking about, like a good bomb drop on a target that is safe for you, safe for the aircraft, safe for anybody that's on the ground that's not the target. And like you said, and that's just like, if we think of it like that, that's just like a single aircraft and a single bomb. Okay, that's not hard. But when you start talking about, okay, now I have fixed wing aircraft flying at 15,000 feet. I have rotary wing aircraft hanging out at 1,000 feet. I've got artillery shooting over here. All that, you throw all that on your map and you're like, oh shit. And then it's not like you have all day to make a plan. This all might be on the go. It might be, hey man, someone just got hit. There's a target over there. Get the air, and it just, I don't know. You got to manage that stress management is definitely key. I'm sure all the other stuff you did prior to TCP definitely prepared you for that.
Yeah, I think that's partially why they sent me. Was I had air wing experience and had communicated with pilots daily. So I knew how to.
You knew the flow.
I knew how to talk the talk and kind of had the flow down. So they're like, yeah, you'll be good at this. I'm like, okay. Well, I trained in the simulators a few times and figured out, the 12-step process and all that stuff, and studied and went to the course, and it was a difficult course. Not a lot of people pass that school, like you said. And I think that was a little bit of why I was sent there.
Well, it's good. I think for you have that perspective because you've been in the aircraft, so you've been on the other side. It may be hard for someone like that's never even been in a helicopter or been in a plane to try to think about what the pilot can see, because and this, trying to do a talk on with an aircraft, if you don't realize, if you don't like kind of think about it for a second and go, hey man, that dude's up at 15,000 feet. What can he really see? That's when you start, oh, okay, well, I need to go big to small. I'm going to find, having that perspective probably helps speed up the process of becoming better at the job, because that's what you have to do. You have to kind of think about, okay, what's the pilot going to do here? And what do I need to do to help accommodate that or whatever, So
yeah, I think it was definitely helpful. I definitely had that vision in my head going into my controls, like, okay, this is stuff I've seen before. I note their altitude, and I knew exactly what that altitude looked like because I'd been there for hours. I had just under 1,000 hours in flight time before I lap moved. So, a lot of experience with that visual. I was able to do some pretty quick talk-ons as my time as a JTAC. So, yeah, I'd say it definitely helped. And I wasn't uncomfortable. I know some people, especially on the enlisted side, get uncomfortable speaking with high-ranking officers for reasons, whatever, just because of that respect thing that I never had an issue with, because I had done it since, as a PFC in the Marine Corps. So
yeah, you have to. Once you become a JTAC, it's like, one, you have to know what you're saying when you get on the radio. It's not not push to think, push to talk. So you have to know what you're about to say, what information has to get passed. But outside of that, mission planning, mission briefing, you could be a sergeant and briefing full bird colonel, maybe higher, on what's the game plan, like what's coming up, who you've talked to, like what aircraft are going to be supporting from what time to what time, what are my pre-planned like route scans or target areas we're going to be looking at, like all that stuff. There's a lot to it. I think people don't realize, some people that haven't been involved in that don't really realize how much to it there is. But outside of that school, you've been to a lot of schools. You've been to airborne, basic airborne. You've been to free fall. You've been to dive. You're McQuiss and the Recon Leaders course. It's quite a bit. What did you? Oh, SEER also. Which you probably did SEER. Did you have to redo SEER once you went to Recon?
No, I did that as aircrew. That was actually between Pensacola and my mechanic school.
What was your SEER experience like? I know you can't talk about much of it, but how was it for you?
I was still, I think I was 18 still. I just out of boot camp. Very young. I was a PFC at the time, so I was able to use that. I'm just a private, I don't know, kind of thing.
Okay.
But I was in Maine. It was early March. It was probably 6 feet of snow on the ground. I think I lost 15 pounds while I was there.
And like how long? Like a week, 2 weeks? It's like a short time frame, right?
A week. Oh yeah, a week and a half. 15 pounds. I'm sure a lot of it was water, but yeah, definitely just, you don't eat hardly anything. You get a little bit of food, but hardly anything. I remember the guy said Obama forgot to salute. He was there with me. We actually shared an apple core covered in dirt that we found in like a pile of dirt, because we were so hungry. Me and that guy would just shared like this little,
oh God, thank God,
stem of an apple. Yeah, so it was a good experience. I was so young and didn't even really realize what I was doing. I didn't even have an aircraft. They're like, hey, you're a crew chief, and I didn't even know what that was. I hadn't even been in mechanic school yet. So I was like, I don't know. I got to say the I don't know thing. I'm sure if I went through it again differently, it'd still be hard. It was somewhere I wouldn't want to go back to. Yeah. I learned a lot. It's weird coming from boot camp and learning to obey everything you're told, instant willingness, obey order, to SEER school, where you kind of have to think like a criminal and disobey. And making that distinction and changing that thought process for me, fresh out of boot camp, very difficult. So I just did what they told me to do, even though I was supposed to resist. SEER, survive, evade, resist, escape. I hardly resisted, so I got a lot of counseling during the thing, like, hey, you got to try a little harder to, not tell them exactly what they're asking for. So I got it eventually, but yeah, I definitely struggled with that fresh out of boot camp. obey everything,
People that
eyes.
haven't been to boot camp don't know, man. I mean, I left Paris Island brainwashed for I was fucked up in the head for a few weeks at least.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I was definitely, brainwashed as much as you can be after boot camp.
You're a robot, you're a robot. Like I'm
Yeah,
not
I
gonna
was
scratch my neck because it's the discipline. I can't scratch my
disciplined.
neck.
Yeah, exactly. So I was still in that mode.
Are you glad you went? Is this? I mean,
I-
in retrospect, would you, if you hadn't been, would you say I'd go again? I know you said you wouldn't now that you've already
yes.
been,
Oh
but
yes. Yeah. I would if I hadn't gone, it's a school worth going to, I would
yeah,
say. Yeah, I did learn a lot. And then it's always something you can reflect on. Like I remember a lot of that school because it was so traumatic in a lot of ways.
that's
um,
crazy.
so reflecting on it, even over the years, it's been a good point of reference for a lot of uh, things in my life, pre-deployment, thoughts and things like that, how to prepare for stuff, and um, just having that mindset of figuring things out. Like, hey, if I'm handcuffed, or whatever the problem is, how do I get out of this? And just that process of thinking, and it's a good school for that, and
Yeah.
just thinking outside the box. There's so much psychology that goes on there too,
Hmm.
um, that people don't realize how much psychology can manipulate you. Like we just talked about in for boot camp, full brainwash by the end of it, and that's just psychology, and one person's psychology placing on someone else and figuring out how that works. And that I saw both sides, boot camp and SEER, kind of show every through those two things. I have every aspect
You know all
of
the tricks.
all the tricks. Yeah, so
For sure.
it's definitely a good school to reflect upon, and I would recommend that to anybody who can go, for sure.
How did your training look after BRC then? Like, what was your kind of school lineup, or did you roll right into a deployment or something?
So after BRC, I checked in the first recon. I think I checked in with my unit, and they're like, we're not deploying for several years, so we're gonna get some schools done. And we had this paper we had to fill out, basically choosing which schools we wanted to go to and kind of applying for seats, little slots to go there. And the first one I turned in was airborne, like right away, which they're like, nope, you got to go to SEER school first, because they want
Yeah.
there's the kind of that thing going on. And I was like, already got it done.
Done.
Like, so like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess airborne's the next one to go to. So I went to airborne pretty much right after I checked in. And then I went, I was supposed to go to, I was assigned to the dive team. I was supposed to go to dive school. Some team shifts happened. Um, so while I was at McQuis in preparation for dive school, which is the Marine Corps instructor of water survival, it's just a water survival swim course. Um, that was kind of supposed to be my prep for dive school, but I ended up not going to dive school because of things out of my control. They put me on a different team, uh, and then sent me straight to JTAC after McQuis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I went to JTAC pretty early on,
Yeah.
um, in my career. I picked up sergeant at ITB after my lat move. Um, so I was a sergeant in a recon team. So I was a little older, had some experience. I had about 5 years in the Marine Corps in the Air Wing. So they sent me to JTAC pretty early. It went airborne, McQuis, JTAC, and then I pretty much didn't go to any schools until right before we deployed. I went to dive school because the team structure changed again. And I got replaced on the dive team. So I went right before, right before.
How was dive school for you?
Very different. I actually had a very different experience. So my dive school was in Okinawa.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yes.
Huh.
So my unit hooked it up. I was at First Recon Battalion. They did a MTT, which is like they moved dive school to Okinawa to get everyone in Okinawa a dive school seat there. So we did a dive school in Okinawa. They had me check out of First Recon Battalion, check into Third Recon Battalion, just for the duration of dive school. Because we were deploying shortly after that, they were able, like, all the way up to the CO of 1st Recon Battalion and the Sergeant Major hooked it up for just me specifically to go to dive school because I was a JTAC, our platoon tried to get a JTAC on each team, and their dive team didn't have a JTAC, and it was easier for me to go to dive school than for anyone on that team to go to JTAC at the time. So they're like, you need to pass dive school. You can't fail. We hooked this up. You're going to Okinawa. You're going to go to dive school and graduate. And if you fail, then you ruin the whole deployment is basically what they're telling me. And this is the CO.
No pressure.
This is the CO and the Sergeant Major of 1st Recon Battalion. And I probably got told by someone in the whole battalion every day until I'd left not to fail.
Don't fucking fail.
Yeah. I went to Okinawa, checked in, and they thought I was checking in to 3rd Recon Battalion to like stay. So that was like a weird thing I couldn't communicate when I got there. The one thing I'd say was intimidating and checking in dive school was their pool out there is deeper than dive school. I think it's 13.5 feet deep in Okinawa. So with the screener, the drown proofing screener that you know about probably, I was a little nervous, but I jumped in the pool the day before as a test run, did it, got my confidence first try. I was like, okay, I'm good. Next day, dive school started, and it was a little rough because I think at dive school, I wasn't there in Florida, but that's where it's usually held. They have the boat set up. You go out, do your dives, come back, wash your gear, go home. In Okinawa, we had to ride 7 tons from Camp Schwab with all our dive gear on to, I think it was Blue Beach, which is a while away, hop out of a 7-ton with all our dive gear on, take it all off, build and inflate Zodiacs to take us out for the dives, and then do the dives, deflate, deconstruct the Zodiacs while washing them, put them in a quad con, and then 7-ton back to Schwab to clean and do maintenance on our dive gear. So it was like probably an extra 4 or 5 hours a day of stuff that people that go to dive school in Florida don't have to do. So, and since I didn't live in Okinawa at the time, I was just there for dive school. I was put in a barracks room with no TV, no internet. I had an American phone, so I didn't call anyone the whole time. So I actually got a lot of reading. I read like 8 books while I was there.
There you go. Yeah.
I had kind of no friends. There was a few Recon Marines that I knew from BRC that I hung out with and all that, but they had their own different training to do. They weren't in dive school at the time. So it was like a weird thing for me, but it allowed me to focus just on dive school, which is what I was there to do anyway. And different experience for sure, but I got kind of hooked up with that. So
was that, now when you were doing that, was your unit doing their pre-deployment workup, or did you come back and then jump into your pre-deployment workup?
Came back and jumped into the pre-deployment work.
How was that for you? I know you guys get to do a lot of, that's like a lot of the cool training you get to do happens for MU, so can you kind of talk through a lot of the different things you did there?
Yes, I think right when I got back, we started our CQB, close quarters battle training, which was 9 or 10 weeks at the time. So it just started with a couple weeks of dry firing and then progressed all the way through to shooting live ammunition in a house at night, full mission prep and all that stuff. So the really fun, awesome things you see on TV and Call of Duty, all that, like that was what I went straight into from dive school, which is a lot of fun. And then we did some amphib for a few weeks, or did hydrographic surveys and Zodiacs, and we had the ship at the time, so we'd take the Zodiacs off the ship over the horizon, so where you can't even see land, navigate to a specific beach, do the beach recon and hydrographic survey, and go all the way back to the ship and kind of download all the data and then make a briefs off of that. And then we actually did urban reconnaissance surveillance training. So that's what we did some black out the windows of some white vans in urban terrain in LA, and concealed carry, following targets that we had photos of throughout the city, and making reports like that, just in civilian attire, which was kind of cool. And then only a little bit of recon surveillance for my team, specifically the dive team, which made some other teams upset. And then a lot of VBSS hits. So boarding other vessels and clearing those out with breaching and sawing through metal and torches and all that kind of stuff. And that took probably 8 to 10 months.
Yeah, it's a huge training package. For the VBSS, visit board search and seizure.
Yes.
What was tougher for you, like getting on the boats, doing the VBSS on boats, or VBSS on the gas and oil platforms?
I'd say the gas and oil platform for
Yeah.
me. Yeah, just because they're a lot larger with multiple levels usually. Usually there are some big ships we boarded,
Mm-hmm.
and the gas and oil platform just has so much kind of junk all over the place that it's very meticulous and tedious to clear out all the little nooks and crannies that kind of exist on those. So that was pretty difficult. Ships are kind of the same way, but I feel like gas and oil platforms, if not taken on well, can leave you with some surprises, where there's guys like hiding in a box that you kind of just walked by, and now you failed the clear because someone was able to sneak by you. So I'd say my platoon struggled a little bit with the gas and oil platforms at first, and then we learned pretty quick, and we're pretty good at those. But also, maybe we didn't spend a lot of time on those. We probably spent like 2 weeks on gas and oil platforms,
Okay.
where we did like ships and smaller vessels for like months before, because that's actually what we did on our deployment. So I think I personally boarded 30 vessels on deployment.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So, which I guess that deployment was kind of weird. We actually got a lot of work. We had a SEAL team attached to our boat. We dropped the entire Marine Corps off in another location, and it was pretty much recon and a SEAL team doing boardings for a few months.
Wow,
So
that's pretty
yeah,
badass.
yeah, it was a good deployment for recon, I'd say.
Yeah, because I seen on both of my deployments with Recon, they're just itching to get a VBSS mission,
Yeah,
and neither deployment they didn't get one. I think one mission came up on the second deployment, and then the Navy dude swooped in and they're like, "We'll take care of this," and they let the Navy guys go and do it because it's supposed to be an unopposed boarding or something. I don't know, but
yeah,
I was like, man, that sucks. You guys train for months and months to do these VBSS missions, and those nerds in the Navy just swooped in, and not even like Navy SEALs. It was like the Navy like security team on the ship.
yeah, yeah. It was weird. Like, we were kind of upset that the SEALs were brought in. Then we ended up doing cross training with the SEALs, where we're like rolling together, clearing out our own ship for practice, because
Mm-hmm.
they had a little bit different procedures for clearing. Like we ran, our 2-man was in charge, but they had their 1-man in charge as far as the stack goes.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So it's
and
just
those guys
learning each other's techniques and stuff like
just
that.
learning each other's stuff for a couple weeks, repracticing, procedures, throwing the hook up, climbing the ladders together. They had some pretty good technology that a few of us trained on for like gathering fingerprints and human data, things like that, for when we grabbed guys. So that was a good cross training deployment, and we went out together probably 12 hours a day, a couple nights, for probably 2 weeks, and then we kind of took over. And then after like a month or two, when things got pretty relaxed out on the ocean, that's when the Navy guys took over. So, but by that point, we were starting to end the deployment. We're about to head back. So,
What were you? What were like the purposes you were boarding different ships? Like for what reason? Because kind of explain like what your guys' overall mission is for that. Because for the average person, they'd be like, "Wait, you just pull up to 30 different ships and be like, let me on?" You know, like how does that work? So why were you doing it?
yeah, so it was over, several weeks. So I think the most boardings I did in a day was three, like three separate vessels. Some days we had none. Some days we'd only be one. Um, but we're doing like anti-piracy mostly missions through like Horn of Africa, Yemen area. So um, anti-piracy, a lot of human trafficking kind of stuff. There's a lot of that going on over there, and just kind of eventually became prevention. So where there were a lot of ships in the area doing some illegal stuff, quickly turned into, hey, I think the enemy's like they're out there. They've hit a few of our ships already, like, and then it kind of became a lot less boardings, and then it turned into, hey, we're just checking fishing vessels and making sure that they're not there's
Smuggling weapons and shit.
weapons or drugs or like a lot of individuals from other countries to other countries, and just it turned into prevention a lot of that eventually.
Were you guys finding a lot of stuff on ships that you boarded?
Um, not really. There was, I'd say the first week and a half were more we're more like finding and identifying things. But then it turned into, hey, these are just normal guys, and get off the ship and leave them alone. So um, it was a very quick change. I think when guys know that they have a boat of recon SEALs rolling up in condition one on their ship, that hands up, and there wasn't a lot of fight going on there. So
I want to. So before we wrap it up, I want to hear about. I want you to be able to talk a little bit about your book if you want to and stuff like that.
yeah.
But before that, what was your like feeling that very first like live boarding? Like we're doing a real ship. This is for real. I'm condition one rolling into the ship. Like what was going through your mind? Like holy shit, this is for real now.
Yeah, it was a pretty crazy feeling. I think, yeah, that was cool. Like looking back, and even in the moment, like, okay, we're going as fast as these boats can go. Like I think I was wearing a hat, and it just flew off. Like me and the boat driver's hat just flew off. Kevlar's on, rack the rifle. We're flying in, about flying down to the ship, about to board, and it's like, okay, we may take contact. If we do, we're ready. Like we trained so much on VBSS on the pre-deployment that it was kind of like I'm like we were just ready to go. So if something happened, we're ready for it, and it was a little bit exciting, a little bit nerve wracking, a lot of unknown. Just I don't know what, like,
In that kind of job, you live in the unknown, right?
yeah,
It's like we're going into this place. We don't have a lot of details. This is the mission.
yeah, and it's like, well, anything can happen. I'm ready for anything. We did most of our training, as you probably remember, is pretty realistic, as realistic as you can make it. So when we were actually boarding, it just felt a lot like a normal boarding.
Just another rep.
Yeah, it's like another rep. So it was very exciting. It's probably the most my heart has ever been racing in my life. But I would compare it to the nerves of maybe if you played football, starting your first game on varsity, and you're the kick returner, and the kicks go like kickoff happen, and the ball's in the air, you're about to catch it. like that feeling.
Like, oh shit, here we go.
Here we go. Like,
Don't fuck it up.
Yeah. So it was a lot like that to me. So
that's awesome, man.
yeah.
So, like I said, we can wrap it up. And your book is the let me go back up to it. Already, you have the title.
All It Takes.
All It Takes. I want to ask you this because do you catch flack from guys in recon for writing a book about going through BRC?
I thought I would. I was actually very nervous to do the project and release it.
Mm-hmm.
I did think like I was going to get a lot of shit, and pleasantly surprised, it was actually the opposite. I actually got a lot of support.
That's awesome.
Which was great. And because I was very nervous and kind of definitely second guessing things. And then, just life lessons and personal philosophies and stuff. It's like, if you fear something, just do it and, hope for the best and, go for it. Kind of feeling like whatever happens. If I do take a lot of crap, then I'll take a lot of crap and I'll learn from it. And maybe I did something wrong, but it's actually been very supportive. I've gotten a lot of emails, phone calls. There's actually plenty of reviews on the book on Amazon that are all positive. All 5-star reviews so far. It's been surprisingly great. I've actually, because I did kind of expect that a little bit.
You got to get harassed a little bit, right?
I thought I was gonna get that. I still might. I don't know, but it's actually so far since it's been out. Came out March 21st.
Okay. So not
21. Yeah, this year.
Nice. Where's it available at?
It's available exclusively on Amazon right now. So I am trying not very hard because I've been busy with school. But I want to make it available at the PXs, possibly, especially at SOI on the East and West Coast if I can, because I feel like that's where it's needed most, and that's probably where most people are going to be looking for it. But as of now, it's just Amazon.
You got to get into that MCCS mafia. Got to break your way into the family so you can get your stuff on the shelf.
Maybe get some contacts in there. But yeah, I need to more focus on that and actually try to for real do that. But so far I haven't. But the book itself kind of discusses the prep course, first, second, and third phase, all of the PT tests the physical training tests that we are expected to do, and how to prep for those, how to prep for swimming, hiking, and running. And there's no fluff in it. I wanted it to be very to the point, exactly what anyone wants or needs for the course, and a quick read. Because I remember myself at 18 years old, I didn't like reading books that much. I don't like to read a bunch of stuff that's repeating itself or just like not really telling me anything new or helpful, just to fill pages. And that's not what this does. You could finish this book in a day pretty easily, and it's designed that way on purpose, so that you can get through it and then reference it quickly when needed. So it's a tool. It's basically a tool for those prepping for the course, and for those even within the course to reference and benefit from.
Yeah, he's got to open the cover and it says "Don't quit." The end. That's
it. It's just a bunch of pages, empty pages. It says "Don't quit."
And then when you're like, "Man, I might quit," I'm going to reference the book. Don't quit. Okay, nah.
There you go.
That's good stuff, man. No, I think it's great. Like we were talking about before. Anything like that. You doing that, the actual unit coming out and doing their Instagram page and being really proactive and posting constantly and stuff on there all the time. All we're doing is making, even if people don't join Recon or whatever, if they're just like learning new skills through these things, hey, you're just making an overall better force anyways, right? That's good stuff. Also, you have a clothing brand. You want to talk about that and where people can find that at?
Yeah, it's Helical, H3LICAL.com. It's basically like a lifestyle brand. I started with my cousin. He's Navy EOD, and my other cousin runs a chocolate factory. But it's basically like a
chocolate factory. Nice.
Yeah, it's a lifestyle of movement, motivation, the pursuit of passions, really, like just like yourself here with the podcast, me with my writing, always continuously moving forward and, chasing your dreams and executing and achieving them. So that's kind of what we try to embody with the outfitting lifestyle brand. So yeah, that's what it's all about. But it's h3lical.com, and that's where you can find it. So
That's sick, man. You gotta keep moving, because if you stop, then you die, right?
that's right.
What good is it to sit around and not do anything? The podcast for me has been great. It's been a cool outlet. It's been cool have people like yourself come on and kind of talk about those unique experiences. Again, I haven't heard from anybody or talked to anybody that was in Japan during all that stuff. So that's like something that you never hear about. And again, those humanitarian missions and stuff. I'm just glad that I have the opportunity with this podcast to like bring people on to kind of share these stories that the average person doesn't know anything about. Who knows what it's like to fly around in one of the president's helicopters. Like how many people have had that opportunity or have been like, know someone that's done that can kind of talk about what that's like. Or like you saw the actual schedule of the president. You didn't see the schedule, but you saw how he basically is scheduled out for the entire like days, weeks, months ahead of time, and the chaos that surrounds that. It's just, it's just good stuff. And I definitely think people should get out and explore something where they create something. A lot of people want to get out and get a job real quick, and that's cool and stuff, and go do that, go get a job, but get a passion. Find something that really is something that kind of makes you want to get up and do it the next day. You get these messages from people that appreciate it and stuff like that. And I think that's what keeps people. You talked at the beginning of the podcast about going through, my neighbor, I can hear my neighbor's dog barking. It threw me off. You talked at the beginning of the podcast about, that rush, getting that rush and then trying to replace that rush. Now I've finished that, after you finish BRC, that feeling of euphoria. Now I got to go to the next challenge. And I think a lot of people get out of the Marine Corps and those challenges aren't really there. Those hardcore challenges aren't really there anymore. And a lot of people suffer from that, and because everything else kind of looks like bullshit. After all the serious work you've done in the military, all the crazy things you've seen and stuff like that, the real world just kind of looks like bullshit. You're like, none of this matters, man. And I don't know. I think people finding a passion is key. I'm kind of rambling right now, but finding passion is definitely a key, for people to like get out and have a good transition. You don't know, you're still in school but guys get out and they miss the military, even if they hated it while they were in, because you miss the people, you miss the camaraderie, you miss the level of giving a fuck that people in the military have compared to your civilian counterparts. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just a different world out in the real world. So it's good stuff. But yeah, we'll wrap it up here, man. Once again, if you want to throw out your Instagram accounts.
Yeah. I think it's travis.nardi, at travis.nardi. And then, and helical, h3lical _ for Instagram. That's pretty much all I have as far as representing myself. But yeah, if you do get the book, go ahead and review it on Amazon. That'd be helpful, and hopefully it helps those guys out. It's just another resource, which there weren't many that long ago. So
yeah, for sure,
it's a good resource for those who need it.
Well, thanks again for coming on the show, man. For everybody out there, my website's jkramergraphics.com. My Instagram is @formeractionguys and @jkramergraphics. Check out both of those. Make sure you like, subscribe, and all that crap to the videos and the audio version. My Apple podcast, I'm up to 126 5-star reviews, so keep doing that. That's awesome. And that's it, man. Thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.